Most people will never escape poverty, and it's not because they're unlucky. It's not because the system is against them. It's not even because they don't want money. Most people will stay broke because of the choices they make every single day. Choices that seem small now, but add up to a lifetime of regret. I want you to listen closely because what I'm about to tell you is not easy to hear. It's harsh. It's brutal. But it's the truth. And if you want your life to change, you need the truth more than you need comfort. I'm going to give you the 10 biggest reasons why most people stay broke their entire lives. And if you see yourself in any of these, you have two options. Deny it, get offended, close this video, or face it, fight it, and fix it. So let's begin. Number 1. You spend more than you earn. Let's start with the most obvious yet the most ignored. Most people live paycheck to paycheck not because they don't earn enough, but because they spend more than they earn. You buy clothes to impress people who don't even care about you. You upgrade your phone when the old one still works perfectly fine. You eat out 5 times a week, and then you cry about your bills. Let me give you a story. There was a young man named David. He worked a regular job, earned about $2,500 a month. Not a huge salary, but enough to survive. The problem? David spent almost everything. A car payment, nights out, clothes, gadgets. By the end of the month, he had maybe $50 left, sometimes less. And every year, he said the same thing. Next year, I'll save. Next year, I'll invest. But years went by, and David never had the money to do it. Now compare David to Mark. Mark earned the same $2,500. But Mark had discipline. He lived below his means. He cut unnecessary spending. Instead of wasting $400 a month on takeout, he cooked. Instead of financing a car, he bought a reliable used one and paid it off. And every month, he put away at least $500. Fast forward 5 years. David is still broke, living paycheck to paycheck. Mark? He has $30,000 in savings, investments growing, and peace of mind. The brutal truth is this. If you can't control your spending, you will never build wealth. I don't care how much you earn. If your expenses always rise to match your income, you will stay broke forever. You need to understand this. Wealth is not built by income. It's built by discipline. Most people don't have a money problem. They have a self-control problem. Number 2, you chase instant gratification instead of long-term success. Most people stay broke because they want the reward today. They don't want to wait. They don't want to build. They don't want to sacrifice. They want the new shoes today. They want the car loan today. They want the vacation they can't afford today. And in doing so, they sacrifice tomorrow. Think about it. Every dollar you spend on instant pleasure is a dollar stolen from your future freedom. Let me tell you about Michael. Michael always said, "Life is short, I want to enjoy it." Every Friday, he went out drinking, spent hundreds on entertainment. Whenever he got a bonus, he bought something flashy. A watch, sneakers, the latest phone. He thought he was living. But in reality, he was digging himself deeper into a hole. By the time he was 35, he had nothing. No savings, no investments, just debt and memories of nights out. That didn't matter. Now compare him to Daniel. Daniel understood delayed gratification. He drove the same car for 10 years. He skipped parties, skipped designer brands, and instead invested his extra money. While others laughed at him for being cheap, he smiled quietly, knowing where he was headed. When Daniel hit 35, he had multiple investments paying him money every month. He didn't have to trade his time for survival anymore. He had freedom. Here's the brutal truth. Broke people trade years of their future for small moments of pleasure today. Rich people trade small pleasures today for a free future tomorrow. If you don't learn how to delay gratification, you'll forever be enslaved to the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. Number 3, you depend on one source of income. This one destroys millions of lives. Most people depend on a single paycheck, and the moment that paycheck stops, their entire life collapses. You know what that means? It means you are not free. It means your security is just an illusion. One decision from your boss, one economic crisis, one layoff, and you're broke again. Let's use a story. There was a man named James. James worked a stable corporate job. He made good money, $70,000 a year. He thought he was set for life. But one day, the company downsized. James was laid off. Suddenly, he had no income, a mortgage, and 3 kids to feed. Within months, his savings were gone. He was desperate, applying for jobs everywhere. Now let's look at Ethan. Ethan also had a job, but he was smarter. While working his 9-to-5, he built side hustles. He sold things online. He freelanced. He invested in dividend-paying stocks. Slowly, he created multiple streams of income. So when Ethan lost his job, he didn't panic. His other streams carried him through. The harsh truth is this: if one source of income controls your life, you are one decision away from being broke. Wealthy people know this. That's why they diversify. They create businesses, investments, and side incomes. They never let their survival depend on one paycheck. If you're listening to this right now, ask yourself, how many ways do I make money? One or many? Because if it's one, you're not safe. You're fragile. Number 4, you fear taking risks. Here's another brutal truth. Most people stay broke because they are terrified of risk. They hide behind security, but what they really have is fear. They cling to the idea of a steady paycheck even when that paycheck keeps them trapped. They're too afraid to start a side business, too afraid to invest, too afraid to take a leap. But let me ask you something. What's riskier? Starting a side hustle that might fail, or spending 40 years in a job you hate just to end up broke anyway? Let me tell you about Chris. Chris had a dream of starting his own business. He talked about it for years, how he wanted freedom, how he wanted to be his own boss. But every time he had the chance, he said, it's too risky. So he stayed in his job, safe, secure, comfortable. But here's the twist. One day, the company cut staff. Chris was let go. Suddenly, the safe choice wasn't safe at all. He lost everything anyway. Now compare him to Alex. Alex also had fears, but instead of letting them control him, he started small. After work, he worked on a side project. It failed. He tried another. It failed too. But the third one worked. Slowly, it grew into a business that replaced his salary. By the time layoffs hit, Alex didn't care. He wasn't dependent on his employer anymore. The truth is this: playing it safe is the riskiest thing you can do. Because when you avoid risk, you also avoid growth. And without growth, you stay broke. Number 5, you don't invest in yourself. The most valuable investment you'll ever make isn't in stocks, real estate, or crypto. It's in yourself. But most people don't do it. They stop learning after school. They waste hours on Netflix and TikTok, but they won't read a single book that could change their mindset. They complain about money, yet won't spend $20 on a book about finance or $200 on a course that could raise their income. Let me give you a story. Robert and Andrew both worked the same entry-level job. Robert hated it. Every day he complained about not being paid enough. But he never did anything to improve himself. He went home, watched TV, played games, and repeated the same cycle. Andrew, on the other hand, used his free time differently. He read books on sales and communication. He took cheap online courses on investing. He practiced new skills every day. Within 2 years, Andrew had a higher-paying job, a side hustle, and the confidence to invest. Meanwhile, Robert was still in the same job, earning the same paycheck, complaining about how life was unfair. Here's the brutal truth. If you refuse to invest in your mind, you will stay stuck. Your income will never grow beyond your personal growth. You can't expect to earn like a CEO if you think like an average employee. You can't expect wealth if you never upgrade your knowledge. The poor man says, education is expensive. The rich man says, ignorance costs more. And he's right, because ignorance keeps you broke forever. Number 6, you surround yourself with the wrong people. There's a saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The truth is, most people stay broke because they surround themselves with losers, people who drag them down, who don't dream, who don't push, who don't think bigger. You see, money isn't just about numbers. It's about environment. If you spend every night hanging out with friends who drink, gossip, complain about the government, and argue about football, guess what? You'll absorb that energy. You'll copy their habits. You'll normalize mediocrity. But if you spend time with people who think about investments, business, growth, and strategies, your whole mindset shifts. Suddenly, the conversations aren't about problems, they're about solutions. Let me tell you a story about Daniel. Daniel grew up in a small town. All his friends were content with just getting by. They laughed at him when he talked about starting a business. They said, "Bro, stop dreaming. Just get a job and be grateful." For years, Daniel listened to them. He worked a 9 to 5, went out drinking on weekends, wasted money on things that didn't matter. He stayed broke. One day, he met James, an entrepreneur from another city. James became his mentor. He challenged Daniel. He told him to stop wasting time, start reading books, and build skills. At first, Daniel resisted. But then he slowly began to distance himself from his old crowd. Within 3 years, Daniel's life completely changed. He launched a small online business. He started investing. His income multiplied. Meanwhile, his old friends were still stuck, doing the same thing, complaining about the same problems. Here's the brutal truth. If you stay around average people, you will live an average life. You cannot fly if you keep walking with people who crawl. Ask yourself this: who's in your circle? Are they lifting you up or dragging you down? Because if the people around you aren't inspiring you to level up, then they are silently keeping you broke. Number 7, you avoid taking calculated risks. Most people stay broke because they play life too safe. They avoid every risk, every chance, every opportunity. And in doing so, they also avoid growth. They say things like, I don't want to lose money. What if it doesn't work out? I'll wait until the perfect time. But here's the truth. There is no perfect time. And refusing to take risks is the biggest risk of all. Think about James, who worked the same 9-to-5 job for 15 years. He hated it, but it was safe. When opportunities came, like starting a small side business or investing, he always found an excuse. Too risky, he said. Now he's 45, stuck in the same job, still broke, and filled with regret. Now compare him to Mark, who once risked $2,000 to start a small e-commerce store. He failed at first, lost money, tried again, failed again. But on the third attempt, the store finally worked. Today, Mark earns more in a month than James makes in a year. The difference? James avoided risk. Mark embraced it. Here's the brutal reality. If you refuse to take calculated risks, you guarantee a lifetime of mediocrity. Wealth is not built by playing safe. It's built by stepping into uncertainty, learning, failing, and adapting. So ask yourself this: are you living safe, or are you living free? Number 8. You refuse to learn new skills. Listen carefully. The world is changing faster than ever before. Technology is replacing jobs, industries are collapsing, and new opportunities are rising every single year. But here's why most people stay broke. They stop learning after school. They think a diploma is enough. They think once they graduate, the world owes them a good life. Wrong. The world owes you nothing. Let me tell you about Sarah. She worked as a secretary for 10 years. She was good at her job, but then her company adopted new software that automated most of her tasks. Suddenly, she wasn't as useful anymore. She was replaced by someone younger, cheaper, and more tech-savvy. Sarah panicked. She had no other skills, no backup plan. She had to start from zero. Now compare her to Lucas, another secretary from a different company. Lucas noticed that technology was changing things. Instead of waiting, he started learning online. He took evening courses in digital marketing and coding. Within 3 years, Lucas quit his old job and became a freelancer, earning triple his old salary. 2 people, same starting point. One refused to learn, the other kept upgrading. Guess who stayed broke? Here's the brutal truth. If you don't learn, you don't earn. The people who win in life are always students. They read, they practice, they adapt. So ask yourself, when was the last time you learned something new that could make you money? When was the last time you invested in knowledge instead of entertainment? Because if your skills stay the same, your income will stay the same. And if your income stays the same while life gets more expensive, you already know what happens. You stay broke. Number 9. You're afraid to take risks. This one hurts the most. Most people stay broke because they play life too safe. They want guarantees. They want comfort. They want to avoid pain. But here's the reality. Comfort is a trap. If you never take risks, you'll never grow. Think about it. The richest people in the world aren't necessarily the smartest, but they all had one thing in common. They took risks when others were too afraid. Let me give you a story. Andrew worked at a factory. He hated his job, but he kept saying, "At least it's stable." He had a small idea for a side business, but he was scared of failure. He didn't want to waste money or look foolish, so he stayed in his comfort zone. 20 years later, he was still in the same factory, Same salary, same struggle, same story. Now look at Ethan, his friend. Ethan also worked in a factory, but one day he took a risk. He started a small cleaning business on weekends. At first it was tough. He lost money, people laughed, but he kept going. Within 5 years, Ethan quit his job. His business grew. Today he employs dozens of people. Same background, different choices. One stayed broke, the other took a risk and escaped. Here's the brutal truth. If you're afraid of losing, you've already lost. Life will punish the coward and reward the bold. You don't need to gamble recklessly, but you must be willing to step into the unknown. Start the business, learn the skill, make the move. Because if you wait for perfect timing, you'll be waiting forever. Number 10. You don't take full responsibility for your life. This is the most painful truth of them all. Most people stay broke because they blame everyone else for their problems. They blame the government. They blame their parents. They blame the economy, their boss, bad luck, or even fate. But here's what they never do. Look in the mirror. Because the moment you blame others, you give away your power. You're basically saying, I can't change anything because it's not my fault. And that's exactly why you stay stuck. Let me give you an example. Michael was born into a poor family. His father left when he was young. His mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. By the time Michael was 18, he was already bitter. He believed the world was unfair. He said things like, how can I ever get rich if I wasn't born into money? So what did he do? Nothing. He stayed broke. Year after year, he repeated the same story to anyone who would listen. His pain became his excuse. Now compare him to Daniel, who grew up in a similar situation. Daniel's dad was absent. His mom struggled. But instead of blaming life, Daniel decided, it may not be my fault, but it's still my responsibility. He worked small jobs, saved every penny, studied at night, and eventually started a small online business. It wasn't easy. He failed more times than he could count. But because he refused to blame anyone, he kept pushing. Today, Daniel is financially free. 2 men, same background, same struggles. The difference? One blamed. The other took responsibility. Here's the hard truth. You are where you are because of the choices you've made. And until you accept that, nothing will change. If you're broke, it's not the government's fault. It's not your parents' fault. It's not your boss's fault. It's yours. And the good news? Since it's your responsibility, that means you also have the power to change it. That's the final reason most people stay broke. They refuse to own their life. Now you know the 10 brutal reasons why most people stay broke their entire lives. And here's the truth. Most people who watch this video will nod their heads, agree with me, and then do nothing. They'll go back to scrolling, wasting time, blaming others, and 5 years from now, they'll still be broke. But not you. If you've stayed with me this long, you've already proven you're different. You want change. You want more. So here's what you need to do right now. Hit the like button. Not for me, but for you. Because every time you engage, you remind yourself that you're serious about growth. Subscribe to this channel. Why? Because the content here is not entertainment. It's a wake-up call. It's fuel to keep you sharp, motivated, and ahead of the 95% who waste their lives. If you want to break free, you need to stay connected to voices that push you higher. Share this video with one friend who needs it. Don't keep the truth to yourself. Sometimes, one video can change a life. And finally, drop a comment below. Tell me, which reason hit you the hardest? And what topic would you like me to cover in the next video? Because this channel isn't just mine, it's ours. Together, we're building a community of people who refuse to settle for being broke. Remember this, most people will live and die in financial chains, but a few will rise, break free, and build wealth that lasts. The question is, which one are you going to be?